congregants and community members. If you've never been to a Jewish service before, our books do open from left to right. And you'll find that a lot of our prayers take up a whole spread. So if you're finding yourself lost in the Hebrew, on the opposite side of the page of almost every prayer is a poetic interpretation of the prayers. That's always a nice place to land if you're not really sure what's going on with the singing. But if you are catching on with any of the tunes, even if you don't know the words, feel free to sing along. Lie, lie, lie is always a big, yeah, Braden's giving me a big thumbs up. So just, participate in whatever way feels comfortable for you. And we will open with a patriotic tune that can be found on page 681 in our prayer book, America the Beautiful.
Feel free to jump in and sing along. I'm going to be skipping the second verse, so it's the first, third, and I think fourth verse. Oh wait, actually, I don't even know how many verses there are in the book. Yeah, the first, second, and last verse is what we will be singing. Oh, beautiful,
For spacious skies, for amber waves of gray, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful, for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy gold revive, till all success be nobleness, and every grain divine. Oh, beautiful for patriot dream that sees beyond the years, thine alabaster cities gleam, undimmed by human tears. America, America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Now, unfortunately, our current board president and executive vice president are getting married tomorrow, both of them, to each other. So they weren't able to make it tonight. So our membership vice president and former president, Jillian Perry, will say some words of welcome on behalf of the board.
Not as loud as they used to be. Shabbat shalom, everyone. Actually do that. So it's my honor to welcome everyone today for our 9th annual Patriots Day service. It's with the deepest gratitude and appreciation that we honor those who protect our country through the service of the military, as well as those that dedicate their lives to daily protection of our community, here and throughout the United States as police officers, firefighters, paramedics, emergency medical technicians. These men and women who have answered the call of honor, duty, and service dedicated their lives protecting life, ensuring safety, and promoting peace. 9 years ago, we as a community chose to commemorate and acknowledge not only those who served and those who gave the ultimate sacrifice in the aftermath of 9/11, but all those who wake up each morning and put our uniform of our country and our communities on for our safety. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge we now approach the 21st anniversary of 9/11. I know looking around this room, most of us remember where we were that day. Many of us knew someone, lost someone, and some of us answered a sacred call as a result of that day. Sorry, I get a little emotional on this there. 20 years ago, in a month, a young man was bar mitzvahed right here where I stand. He was 14 when the towers fell, and he felt the call to action. He answered that call right after his graduation from high school. Lance Corporal Colin Wolfe was deployed to Iraq in July of 2006 and gave the ultimate sacrifice for his country in what he believed. One was truly blessed to know Colin, but even those who never had a chance to meet him were blessed to know his story. I share this part of the story with you because this young man was about 5 years younger than me. He was a boy becoming a man when he felt this call to service. He was raised to know honor and respect from his family. He had spent time with other Marines before joining. He understood that putting on the uniform meant he became his community and his country's keeper. So we often speak of the young and fallen and forget what their stories have taught us. I think his story shows us, young or old, service to others is a calling that is felt deep and answered and executed with honor and dignity. When you put on that uniform each morning, you represent your community and country, and something far more than yourself. Lastly, you did choose to live your life in or out of the uniform with honor and dignity, being an example or mentor to all that have known you. I would like to thank you all for coming here tonight to honor those who have given that ultimate sacrifice, and yet those who still wake up every day to put on that uniform. I'd like to also thank our invited guests, and I'm going to make sure I don't miss anybody. So, Delegate Rumar, and you're speaking on behalf of HRC. That way, sorry. Chief Newsham, Chairwoman Wheeler, Supervisor Bodie, Delegate Maldonado, I'm going to get that right, I swear. And Delegate Guzman. I knew I saw you sneak in the back there. But most importantly, I want to thank our friends and family that join us each week and join in prayer for our community each week. At this time, I'd like to invite up Prince William County Police Chief Newsham, and also, right after him, Delegate Rumar from the HRC.
Good evening. I'm Pete Newsham. I'm the Chief of the Prince William County Police Department. On September 11th, 2001, 19 terrorists with hate in their hearts hijacked 4 commercial airliners with the intent of inflicting major destruction and mass casualties in our beloved country. The planes were purposely flown into the World Trade Center, 1 into each tower, the Pentagon, and a 4th, thanks to the heroic actions of the passengers on board, crashed in a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Many of us watched in disbelief the images in the media showing the 2 towers fall and the images of smoke billowing from the Pentagon. I can tell you, working in Washington, D.C. at the time, that vision will never leave me. Nearly 3,000 Americans lost their lives on that day, and thousands more would lose their lives from exposure to the toxins in the air while they worked at Ground Zero in the years that followed. Parents, children, spouses, family, and friends, all devastated by the worst evil we have seen in our lifetimes. You know, when I think back on that tragic day, I always remember the heroism that was displayed by so many. passengers on the flight in Pennsylvania who attempted to overtake the hijackers, who knows where that plane would have landed. Their heroism saved lives. The members of our military who lost their lives while working at the Pentagon, serving our country, protecting our freedom. And the first responders, the men and women who rushed into the Twin Towers, the men and women who ran into the Pentagon, the men and women who responded to the plane crash in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, the countless medical staff who tended to the wounded, the countless number of workers who put themselves in harm's way to sort us through the rubble at Ground Zero. As I reflect, I'm still saddened about the senseless loss of life. I'm still angry about the hate that was displayed toward our country. But at the same time, I'm also very proud. I'm proud of the resiliency that our country has shown following such a horrendous tragedy. My continued condolences go out to those families who lost a loved one on that day, and to the thousands of families who have lost somebody since, and to the families who may lose someone in the future due to the exposure. My continued thanks go out to all the heroes and first responders who selflessly rushed to the scenes, and a thank you to all of our first responders who do that work every single day in our communities, keeping us safe. Last but not least, thank you to Ner Shalom for continuing to recognize our first responders, for inviting us into your house of worship so we can celebrate them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Evelyn Brumar. I'm the Human Rights Commissioner for Prince William County. And what I'm going to share with you is my personal experience on that day. I wasn't on this coast. I was on the West Coast. I spent the night before celebrating a friend, their birthday, with other friends, partying up like tomorrow was not even in the view. That morning when I woke up, I was at a friend's house. And I turned on the news, and I saw that one of the towers had already come down. I was in complete shock what was going on. It took me at least 2 minutes to understand what was happening to our country, what had just happened, how many voices were silenced. I told my friend, I need to be with my family. I need to be with my loved ones. We just lost many people, and they'll never be with their loved ones. I need to be with my family. At this time, they were shutting bridges down in San Diego because that was the next target. We believed that was going to be the next target. I needed to cross a bridge to get back home to my family. As I was backing out and rushing out of the house, a vehicle was coming up the road who was listening to the news and wasn't paying attention to me backing out and slammed into my truck. In any normal circumstance, I would have been upset. But I knew that love was more powerful that day. Many people were sorry and hurt and full of pain and regret because they didn't get a chance to say that they loved somebody that they just lost. I walked out of my truck, went to the woman who crashed into me, asked her if she was okay, and she was upset. My first response was to hug her and tell her, I know, I love you. Please be safe. Wherever you're going, get to those people. We don't know how long we have. It was a day of fear and love, a day of leading with love, because I led with my heart to be with family, be with people who are important to me. And I got to them. Love led me to my wife, who was stationed in San Diego just before she was going to be deployed to continue the fight in another country. During that time, it was during Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and I knew how important it was to serve our country, to continue the fight for love and protect our loved ones here in the United States. So I put myself back in the closet and allowed her, with honor and privilege, to serve our country, even though it was a great risk to our being and our lives. And we continued to do that for 7 more years. Then we came to Virginia. And in Virginia, the calling to serve continued. many law enforcement, first responders, and military people that we've met along the way before we got to Virginia, I greeted with love and respect because I know that at any moment their lives can be taken and called. I know that I might be the last smiling face they see. And as a Human Rights Commissioner, they know that I will be the voice that fights for them, that I continue to serve in many different aspects, not just for the community and the service that I do for the community, not just for leading with love, and not just making sure that those who have been left behind continue to be recognized, lifted, and brought forward, but also fighting for those who might not fight for me. Because love has power. Recognizing those that serve out of love for other people that they don't know. And I continue that to this day. Understand that our first responders, our law enforcement, our military, and those who serve in public office do that for everyone because we know how important community is. We know how important it is to keep it strong, keep it safe, and to lead with love. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both so much for those words to set the tone of our special service tonight. We turn back to our prayer book, and on page 128, we find the prayer, one of our common opening prayers, Hine ma tov umanaim shevet achim gam yachad. How good and pleasant it is when siblings dwell together, and we're so grateful that all of our siblings of Prince William County are represented here tonight, and that we have this opportunity to pray together. Hine ma tov umanaim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov umanaim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov umanaim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov umanaim shevet achim gam yachad. On page 679, we find the Star-Spangled Banner. If you are able, if it is your custom, please rise for our national anthem to begin this service. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars fight o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? You may be seated. To light our Shabbat candles and say the blessing to bring in the Sabbath on page 120, I would like to call up Amy and Mark Wolf. Jillian mentioned earlier how proud this community is of this ultimate sacrifice that Colin had made for this community, and so it is our honor to welcome up his parents to bring in this special Shabbat service.
Did you say Jen?
No,
Just us?
just you. You can do this.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu, l'hadlich ner shel Shabbat. Blessed art thou, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us by thy commandments, and command us to kindle the Sabbath lights.
Amen. Thank you. On page 125, please read along with me. Where has this week vanished? Is it lost forever? Will I ever recover anything from it? The joy of life, the unexpected victory, the realized hope, the task accomplished. Will I ever be able to banish the memory of pain, the sting of defeat, the heaviness of boredom? On this day, let me keep for a while what must drift away. On this day, let me be free of the burdens that must return. On this day, Shabbat, abide. Help me to withdraw for a while from the flight of time, contain the retreat of the hours and days from the grasp of frantic life. Let me learn to pause, if only for this day. Let me find peace on this day. Let me enter into quiet world on this day. On this day, Shabbat, abide. On page 144 is our Reader's Kaddish. There are a few types of Kaddishes that appear throughout a Jewish service. And this one is sort of the palate cleanser from our opening statements and songs and blessings into the real meat of this service. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chaye dechol beit Yisrael bagala uvizman kariv ve'imeru amen. Yehesh me Rabba mevarach ve'alamul al me'almaya yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yiromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shemei dekudasha b'richu leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata damiran be'alma ve'imeru amen. On page 146, please rise for the call to worship. Yai da 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 yai da 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 yai da 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 yai da 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 yai da 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 Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach, HaMevorach Leolam Va'ed. HaMevorach, HaMevorach Leolam Va'ed. You may be seated. This is an hour of change. Within it we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my sibling, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai Hama'ariv Aravim. As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. On pages 152 and 153, we find the Shema, followed by the Ve'ahavta. These are words taken straight from our Torah. The version that has the English in it is going off a slightly older translation than what is in the book on page 154, but you can more or less still follow along. Please rise if it is your custom. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Leolam Va'ed. And thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy might. And all these words which I command you on this day shall be upon thy heart, shall be upon thy heart. And thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children. And thou shalt speak of them when thou sittest in thy house, when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up, and when thou risest up. And thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thy hand, and they shall be for frontlets between thine eyes. And you shall write them on the doorposts of thy house, and upon thy gates, and upon thy gates, that ye may remember and do all of my commandments, and be holy unto your God, unto your God, unto your God. Please be seated. On page 157, we read responsively, "In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth. From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way. Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed." Mi chamocha bailim Adonai, mi kamocha neder bakodesh, nora tehilot osef ele, nora tehilot osef ele. Malechutecha ra'u banecha bokei hayam, lifnei Moshe ze'eli. Anu ve'ameru Adonai, yimloch le'olam va'ed. Mi chamocha bailim Adonai, mi chamocha neder bakodesh, nora tehilot osef ele, nora tehilot osef ele. Page 160. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace and raise us up our guardian to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake, be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and to peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. Page 162. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. Beini uvein b'nei Yisrael, oti le'olam, oti le'olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai, et hashamayim ve'et ha'aretz. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. V'ayom hashvi'i shavat vayinafash, shavat vayinafash, Shavat vayinafash. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat lidorotam berit olam. And with that, we enter the central blessings of our prayer service. The tefillah begins on page 164 and continues over the next few pages. Please rise if you are able. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilatecha. Eternal God, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your glory. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, v'Konei Hakol, v'Zocher Chastei Avot v'Imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei v'Nehem, L'ma'an Shemo be'ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshiach u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Abraham ve'Ezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechaye hakol atah Rav le'Hoshia, Morid hatal, Mechalkel chayim bechesed, Mechaye hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim ve'rofeh cholim, Omatir asurim, Umekayem emunato, Lishenei afar, Michamocha ba'al gevurot, Umido melach, Melech memit umechaye, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman atal hachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechaye hakol. Atah kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, V'kadoshim b'chol yom yehalelucha selah, Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el hakadosh. You may be seated. We continue together on page 173. Disturb us, Adonai. Ruffle us from our complacency. Make us dissatisfied with the peace of ignorance, the quietude which arises from a shunning of the horror, the defeat, the bitterness, and the poverty, physical and spiritual, of humans. Shock us, Adonai. Deny to us the false Shabbat which gives us delusions of satisfaction amid a world of war and hatred. Wake us, O God, and shake us from the sweet and sad poignancies rendered by half-forgotten melodies and rubric prayers of yesteryears. Make us know that the border of the sanctuary is not the border of the living, and the walls of your temples are not shelters from the winds of truth, justice, and reality. Disturb us, O God, and vex us. Let not your Shabbat be a day of torpor and slumber. Let it be a time to be stirred and spurred to action. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Page 179. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of every land. Plant virtue in every soul. Lost my place. Name, hallow every home and every heart. Praised are you, Eternal One, who blesses our people with peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamevarech et amo Yisrael, b'shalom. We take a moment now for silent prayer. You might use the words on pages 180 and 181, or the meditations of your own heart. lefanecha, Adonai tzuri, Adonai tzuri, v'goali, v'goali. May the words of our hearts and the meditations of our mouths be acceptable to you, Adonai, our rock and redeemer. We turn our thoughts now to those in our community who are in need of healing. We have on our list Rosalind Cantu, Lori Perry, Nick Joliot, Rhonda Butler, Ira Dornfeld, Frank Lerner, Ali France, Shmuel Yosef Ben Yisrael Tzvi, Ann Cohen, Anita Ash, Patty Bergeron, Josiah Miller, Debbie Rubenstein, Jed Michael, Kathy Katz, Taliba Hassan, and Donna Goldstein. And if anyone else has a name of someone they'd like to say a prayer for healing, please share that now. Our Misha Berach is on page 371. And we hold in our hearts all those in need of healing of mind, body, and spirit. Misha Berach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Le'imotenu. May the source of strength, who blessed the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Misha Berach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha La'avotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. It is our custom every week to also pray for the health and safety of all those who are active military, first responders, and peacekeepers in our community. That list includes Oni Hinnanen, Joshua Ehrlichman, Martin Brown, Howard Mergler, Kyle Smet, Andrew Booth, Joseph Cald, Pete Abelson, Jeremy Sharkey, Benjamin Hurd, Alexander Furman, Daniel Gilman, Curtis Miller, Rob Apgar, Ben Farrell, Caleb Menzies, Francis Petraka, Noah Kaplan, Aaron Breeding, Dakota Rollins, Jacob Duvris, Janet Ingraham, and Tyler Adcock, and all those in the armed services and ships at sea that tune in and watch us from our YouTube channel. And of course, this week, I want to extend that beyond our own congregational community to all of our first responders here in Prince William County that are represented here tonight and elsewhere. And I imagine plenty of you probably have other names to add who are active military duty, and in the line of fire and such, if you'd like to add any names as well. Or not. Well, for all those out there whose jobs are dangerous so that our lives might not be, we pray that the one who blessed our fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and our mothers, Sarah, Rebecca, Leah, and Rachel, bless those who are serving in our armed services. May God guard them and keep them from harm. If they find themselves in danger's path, may God bring them back whole of mind and body to all those who love them. May it be your will, Adonai Tzevaot, to lead them to safety and to protect them from each and every enemy and ambush. May God make their journey successful and guard their going out and coming in with mercy and love, and let them be blessed to return home with life and peace, now and forever. And let us say, Amen. And we also say a prayer for our country on page 376. O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation and the alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace. May we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and spirit. And let us say, Amen. At this time, Bev Conrad will come up to read another prayer for our country, George Washington's prayer, which can be found on the back of your program. You have yours, okay?
I just wanted to say one thing. When you realize this was written by George Washington, and then you realize what's happening in the world today, it's amazing how appropriate it still is. Almighty God, Father of all human beings, to you we raise thankful hearts for deliverance from forces of evil. Deliver us also from the greater dangers of ourselves. Have mercy upon us and forgive us for our part in the present desolation of the world. Awake us to a sense of responsibility in saving the world from ruin. Open our minds and eyes and hearts to the desperate plight of millions. Arouse us from indifference into action. Let none of us fail to give his utmost in sympathy, understanding, thought, and effort. Fulfill in us and through us your glorious intention, that your peace, your love, and your justice may enter into the regeneration of the world. George Washington.
Amen. Shabbat Shalom, and welcome again to all of our guests. It's been such a lovely service so far with all of you here. This week's Torah portion is Parashat Ki Tetzei, in which we find more laws than in any other Torah portion in the whole Torah, even the one named laws. Among the list of commandments in this Torah portion are the rules regarding returning lost objects. This might seem mundane, but how we relate to concepts of property and care for other people's possessions is a crux of social order, and there is an entire tractate of Talmud about it. That is, there are volumes of the foundational compendium of Jewish law written between the year 50 and 500 CE on this topic. Deuteronomy 22 opens with the commandment to return any lost items found. It lists a few examples of potential lost items, details on how you should hold it for the owner if you're not sure who the owner is or how to return it to them, and even how to ensure that you don't return it to a deceiver trying to steal an item which never belonged to them in the first place. The Talmud elaborates that there are some cases in which the person who found the item did their due diligence, but the item was never claimed, and there is no identification to trace it back to an owner. In such cases, the property becomes hefker, declared ownerless. At that point, it is up to the local rabbinic court or authority to determine what to do with that property. So this rabbinic authority has decided that all of the items that have been in our lost and found box for 2 years are going to the Axe thrift store. So please, if any of you also have clothes that you would like to donate and declare ownerless, you may bring them to our collection box anytime between now and Yom Kippur, along with the non-perishable food items that we also always gather at this time of year for acts and serve. The Jerusalem Talmud, which we generally reference far less often, usually when we say the Talmud, we mean the Babylonian Talmud. There's, for example, about 120 pages preserved on the topic of property law in the Jerusalem Talmud, and 400 pages in the Babylonian Talmud on the same topic. So you can see the Jerusalem Talmud was not as well preserved and is not often as quoted. But there is one story in it that isn't recorded among the Babylonian rabbis. Alexander the Great came to visit the king of Katya, and he was shown much gold and silver, but he said, "I didn't come to see your gold and silver. I came to see your laws and customs." As they were sitting, two people came to litigation before the king. One of them said, "My master, my king, I purchased a ruin from my friend. I demolished it, and I found a treasure hidden inside it. So I said to him, 'Take your treasure.' I purchased a ruin, not a treasure." And the other one said, "Just as you fear the punishment for theft, so do I. I sold the ruin and everything in it, from the depths of the earth to the heights of the heaven." So the king summoned one of them and asked, "Do you have a son?" And he said yes. And then he summoned the second one and said, "Do you have a son?" And that one, "Do you have a daughter?" And that one also said yes. Could still be both. Anyway. So the king said, "Let them marry each other, and the treasure shall belong to the two of them." Alexander was amazed. The king said to him, "Did I not rule well?" And Alexander said, "No, you did not." So the king said, "If such a case came before you, in your country, what would you do?" And Alexander said, "I would cut off both their heads and send the treasure to the royal palace." Said the king of Katya to Alexander, "Does the sun shine in your country?" And Alexander said, "Yes." "And do the rains fall upon you?" "Yes." "Perhaps there are cattle and herds in your land." "Yes, of course there are," Alexander said. "By my life," said the king of Katya, "it is for the sake of the cattle and herds that the sun shines for you and the rains fall upon you." This parable demonstrates so much about the values of this mythical Katya. It is a place ruled by a fair and pious king, a place with citizens concerned with righteousness and fair property rights. It is a place where Torah values of community, justice, and lawfulness are celebrated and where those values are symbiotic. Too often, our secular society does not celebrate these values in equal measure, and the skewed ways in which we view them often leads to law and order feeling juxtaposed to social justice, rather than having our laws reflect a system of righteous justice. Further on in the Torah portion, Deuteronomy 25 says, "When there is a dispute between persons and they go to law, and a decision is rendered declaring one of them right and one of them wrong, the guilty should be flogged. The magistrate shall have the guilty person lie down and supervise the giving of lashes by count as warranted by the offense. The guilty one may be given up to 40 lashes, but not more, lest being flogged further to excess, your peer be degraded before your eyes." So flogging is inhumane to us now, but it was the way of the world in the time of the biblical recording. And in its context, this punishment is more gentle than many others in the ancient world. The idea implicit in these verses is that there is a finite amount of punishment for any guilty. And once they have undergone it, they are immediately reintegrated into society. We can't know exactly how this played out in the biblical era, but it seems that even in the ancient rabbis who were committed to upholding these laws of Torah as they understood them after the cataclysmic destruction of the center of Jewish life in Jerusalem, they too were hesitant to rule too quickly or punish too harshly. Property law, being a category of nonviolent crime, required the criminals to pay restitution along with returning the stolen object or its value. And it also encouraged reconciliation, and it never sought to separate the offender from the community. In cases of violent crime, there's obviously much more concern about the offender not having further access to victims, but there was still concern about the offender's humanity. There were sanctuary cities where someone accused of manslaughter could stay until the courts were ready to try and convict them, thereby separating the offender from the victim without imprisoning someone who has not yet been convicted of any crime. Further, the rabbis put barrier upon barrier around the ability to sentence someone to death. It wasn't outlawed, it was just made so difficult that it would never happen by accident to an innocent person or to a person with more nuanced circumstances regarding their crime. This Shabbat marks anniversaries for the 1971 Attica prison uprising, the 2016 national prison strikes, and the 2018 prison strikes, the last of which got almost no media coverage. Despite the legal precedent of biblical law upon which so much Western civilization morality is supposedly based, and despite the ongoing efforts of incarcerated people, their families, and their advocates, the prison industrial complex in this country continues to overpunish property and drug crimes, nonviolent crimes which also have the highest rates of recidivism, and hand down oppressive sentences with few resources for the incarcerated to ever reintegrate into society, and disproportionately incarcerates people of color. Jewish law, in its many iterations over the last 3,000 years, has shown time and again utmost concern to true justice over punishment. This time of year is known as the season of teshuvah, or repentance, because of our upcoming High Holy Days focused on the process of atoning for our sins. But every day is a day for teshuvah, and the Bible and the Talmud are both clear that once teshuvah has been done, the sin is wiped clean, and there should be no further bars against a person for their prior wrongdoings. There are discussions in the legal texts about how too harsh a punishment will turn a person's heart bitter and away from teshuvah. Restitution must fit the crime, and there must be pathways toward improvement for the one who commits the crime, as this will inevitably lead to improvements in society as a whole. I could talk for hours and give countless examples of where justice has been corrupted in our legal and law enforcement practices in this country, but one example is fresh on my mind this week, even though it occurred in 1997. In 1997, a Boy Scout murdered his family. He was convicted and given several life sentences. As someone with no chance of ever reintegrating into society, the prison system does not offer him the already paltry services it offers to some others in prison: educational options, mental health care, etc. It makes sense from a certain standpoint. Why invest in someone who can't ever bring those investments back into society? Except that incarcerated people are still human and deserve more than to stare at walls all day. And we already spend over $70 billion on prisons anyway, which, as I said, are mostly filled with nonviolent criminals that probably don't need to be there for so long in the first place. So smart investing in our population is not actually a value for the US Congress. Now let's also factor in the nuances of this particular case. This was a boy who was abused in many horrible ways for many years by his scout master, who eventually told him to kill his parents rather than risk exposure of their relationship. The boy was mentally broken down and brainwashed by his abuser and did as he was told. I understand that awareness of how trauma changes the human brain may have been different in 1997, but by the 2016 prison strikes asking for things like better educational services and mental health care, it seems reasonable that those programs could have been expanded. But they still haven't been, at least not across the board. and this former Boy Scout is still in prison and still hasn't received the therapy he would need to ever really deal with the crimes he committed or the crimes that were committed against him. And the only reason this case is being reinvestigated and was the source of this news story that I discovered is due to a lot of activism on the part of the other family members of the other victims of the same Scoutmaster, who understand the level of trauma that these boys endured. That means even if he does get the resources he needs and deserves, it will only be a singular circumstance and not real justice in the system. I think that Prince William County is a real family-oriented community, and that the values here reflect a lot of the values of the Torah and Talmud. Despite its lack of ritual Jewish resources like kosher food or walkable anywhere, it is a great place to be the rabbi. And I love my role in the community connections as well as being the faith leader here at Ner Shalom. So I don't share these concerns over law and justice as they are represented in the Torah as an indictment of our system or anyone here, but rather to say that there is more work for all of us to do to ensure that more communities look like ours. If we can have law enforcement officers and local legislators that we trust, every neighborhood in every city in this country should have that, and currently that's simply not the case. Humanity is interconnected, and it is our duty to lift each other up, to fix broken systems, and repair the world to better reflect the values of fairness, righteousness, equality and equity, community, justice, and lawfulness. May we see that world come together, and may we be a part of building a better future for all. Amen and Shabbat Shalom. And now, I'd like to call up Harry Kantrovich for what is sure to be, as always, a moving speech.
Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Great. I can practice my acting skills.
Just for the people on YouTube, you know.
YouTube? I just like microphones. Good evening. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you for joining us on this observance of the day President George W. Bush proclaimed Patriot Day. 21 years ago, our nation was attacked by those who seek to end our way of life, our freedom. The men and women who earned the title of hero that day in New York City, at the Pentagon, and in the skies over Pennsylvania have a special place in our hearts. We will never forget their courage and their selflessness. The same as we should never forget that the same courage and selflessness from our first responders, veterans, and military members today. When the terrorists struck, Americans recognized the act for what it was, an attack on our way of life and on the freedom and democracy we cherish. And America responded through military action and, just as importantly, by individuals reaching out to families, families reaching out to their communities, and communities coming together as a nation united. President Bush challenged each of us to be stronger, more compassionate, and generous, and better attuned to the needs of both neighbors and strangers. He told us the best way to respond to acts of evil was through acts of kindness. He asked us to commit ourselves to the pursuit of peace in the world and security at home. We do this through our commitment to our families and to our communities. And we do this in the hope that our vigilance today will spare future generations from the challenges we have faced. Ask a first responder, veteran, or an active duty military member why they do what they do, They'll tell you they are part of something bigger than themselves, serving their country, serving their community. The probability is great that a military member and a first responder laid down their lives last night, and others will lay down their life tonight. The best way I know how to honor them is to ask all who have ever served or still serve in uniform to please stand, take a moment of silence. Remember the firefighters, rescue personnel, law enforcement officers, and members of the armed forces who have given their all for our way of life. As you stand and remember, I would like to close with a prayer of remembrance for fallen heroes. Some might have stood by, but you stood up. You gave your lives so others might live. We are indebted to you. We are humbled by you. When all hope was lost, when the world seemed like a dark and heartless place, you restored our faith in people and our trust in God. You taught us hope and fearlessness and honor. We miss you. We will never forget your heroism. We will teach our children and grandchildren about your courage in the face of danger. We will try with all our might to live up to the example you have set. We will not ignore human suffering. We will not be indifferent to the cries of those in pain. You did not die in vain. You have changed us. You live inside us in pride and love. May God watch over you as you watched over us. Rest in peace. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. May God bless America.
Before we turn to our concluding prayers, I'd like to ask Arab back up to join me for some announcements and then also just to sing with me.
Okay, guys. A lot of announcements this week, so bear with me. I'm going to start by saying thank you for everyone who came from the community to our special service, and just to mention that Delegate Brianna Sewell was missed. The first thing I want to say to our congregation is thank you to Debbie Bruce for being so steadfast in keeping us all apprised of our community events. She would probably appreciate me sharing with you that the combined federal campaign has got underway on September 1st, and Ner Shalom is again participating. So if you are a federal worker, please reach out to find out our CFC number and EIN. It is listed in the e-Kibitz. And if you have a relative or a friend who works for or is retired from the government, please pass the number on to them. We are all very grateful. Jewish calendars will be available on the table in our lobby. The Havarot for our teen youth group, the new young adult 18 to 20 somethings, our new hiking group, and all our adult ed will all start in October after High Holy Days. And of course, our Ner Shalom book club is happening this Wednesday, September 28th. Oh, not this Wednesday, but coming up on the 28th at 10:30 in the morning. And as always, it will be on Zoom. And the book that is being discussed is The Girl in the Middle, Growing Up Between Black and White, Rich and Poor. Religious school. It starts this Sunday.
Woohoo!
So please bring your registration forms and tuition checks with you. If there's any concern with your registration or any costs, please don't hesitate to ask. And class begins promptly at 9:30. so really please show up at 9:15. Students have an hour of Hebrew and an hour of Judaics, and separated by an hour of tefillah, and this usually includes some snack time and some recess at the discretion of the teachers. Our regular Erev Shabbat services are in person and on YouTube on the 16th, 23rd, and 30th at 7:30. On the 18th of September at 3 p.m. is the International Day of Prayer for Peace and Unity in the community will be happening. We would like as many of our congregants to be attending. It will be taking place at the Ferlazzo building on the county's eastern campus. Aha! And the High Holy Days schedule. You will notice we started morning services a bit earlier this year. We're hoping to give folks who cannot take the whole day off from work a chance to worship. And please also note the special services for our young folk. Selichot is September 17th at 7:30 p.m. And join us for this special Havdalah that welcomes in the days of awe. And then our Tat Shana is September 25th at 5:30 p.m. Erev Rosh Hashanah is Sunday, September 25th at 7:30. And traditional morning service is at 9 a.m. on Monday with Tashlik at 2 at Bull Run Marina. There is a super special reverse Tashlik on Sunday, October the 2nd at 2 p.m. We join the Jews around the world to clean up watersheds. So instead of throwing it into the water, we pick up the trash. And we will be there volunteering. We will not be going into the water, but cleaning up around the marina, the parking lots, and just trying to prevent trash from going into the waterway. If you'd like to volunteer, please go to www.repairthesea.org and register. And then the names of the participants should be forwarded to Rabbi Liz. Food collection. We will be collecting, as Rabbi Liz said, non-perishable food for local food closets on Yom Kippur. Kol Nidre services will be at 7:30 p.m. on Tuesday, October 4th, with traditional Yom Kippur and other services on Wednesday the 5th, with a breakfast outdoors following services. Please check emails and the website for full schedule of services and keep checking in case of any changes. I told you it was a lot.
Thank you. All right. I can't see where you're. Okay. We turn now to our concluding prayers with Aleinu on page 586. Juliet, will you come help me open the ark? And please rise if you are able. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, lated gedula liotzer breshit, shelo asanu kagoye haratzot, v'lo samanu kamishbechot ha'adama, shelo sam chalkenu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam, va'anachnu korim, Umishtachavim umodim lifnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu v'nemar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol haaretz bayom hahu yeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. You may be seated. We turn our thoughts to those who are no longer with us in body, but remain with us in spirit. This week marks a yahrzeit, an anniversary of death for Harvey Labanow, Aldo Ottaviano, Leon King, Joseph Ash, Bertha Herman, Isaac Bormel, Cynthia Alpert, Florence Friend Shapiro, Fran Segal, Harold Herman, and Josephine Cosme. And we are still within a year of mourning for Samuel Fallis, Elaine Skolnick, Edith Herman, Phyllis Rosen, Jill Rosen, Dr. Jack Schuber, Aaron Scanlon, Lieutenant Colonel Stanley Heath, Mary Kennedy, and Minna Dornfeld. If anyone else has a name that they would like to share, please do so. We hold in our hearts all those who we have loved, who have gone before us. May their memories always be for a blessing. The Mourner's Kaddish is on page 598. Mourners and those who wish to join them may rise. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon u'v'yomechon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'v'zman kariv, v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'alam u'almei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'it hadar, v'it ale, v'it halal, shemei d'kudesha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush bechata v'nechemata, ta'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlam araba min shemaya, v'chayim alenu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom alenu ve'al kol Yisrael. V'imru, amen. You may be seated. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, imru, amen. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. V'imru, amen. In just a moment, we will go outside for an oneg and kiddush. We'll say a little blessing over wine and bread and then have some time for fellowship. And so before we do, our closing song will be God Bless America on page 680. And Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Please sing with me. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Written by a Jew. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.